Good morning, dear listeners. In my today's podcast, I am going to briefly explain the most important concept of all fraud examination and fraud detection. That is the basic thing, fraud triangle. See, it is very, very important for all the fraud examiners and all the those concerned in this field to understand thoroughly the basic concepts of a fraud triangle. As someone rightly said, in describing, informing why this concept is very important, it is for the love of money. People do frauds for the love of money. So let's briefly go through the topic fraud triangle. See, as you all know, fraud is defined as misrepresentation of a fact by the perpetrator of fraud, knowing it to be false, and the persons or victims believing it to be true and acting on such belief that incurs monetary and financial losses. So, we have two people, the perpetrator, the fraudster or scamster, and the victim or victims who can be from individual to corporate or anyone. See, thus, it all consists nothing but people. Money and people are involved in all frauds. So, and a fraud can be committed by anyone who may not be a scamster or fraudster, but still somebody can turn out to be one. So, incidentally, it is also interesting to understand the characteristics found in a person committing fraud. They are very charismatic, they are very dominant leaders, they are very flamboyant and enterprising, they are also dishonest and rogue employees, and also psychopathic personalities who commit these frauds. Now what is fraud triangle? Fraud triangle has three major components, and this term is used in the context of an employee fraud in an organization in general, but applicable to any person committing the frauds at different levels of an organization or otherwise. So the fraud may take the shape of misappropriation of cash, assets of the organization, or anything done for duping another for the sake of money. So, then what are the components of this triangle? They are opportunity, pressures, rationalization, attitude. In this episode, let me briefly tell you that I talk mostly fraud triangle from the perspective of an employee and an individual. Okay? So now in fraud triangle, the most important ingredients are opportunity, pressure, and third one is rationalization or attitude of the person. Now let us examine the three components of the fraud triangle. Now, first opportunity. Opportunity, what do you mean by opportunity? Opportunity is a factor that a long-serving employee will resort to in committing a fraud, taking advantage of his proximity to management and control over several operations of the organization where the organization is a smaller one, where the controls are vested with one person. Secondly, pressures. What do you mean by pressures in the fraud triangle? Pressures are another cause of fraud, mainly due to, it could be financial problems at home, family issues at home, children's education, health issues, or most important, addiction to bad habits like gambling and other vices. And finally, rationalization or attitude. What do you mean by rationalization or attitude of the fraud triangle? It is a third component of the fraud triangle, and here the employee rationalizes or justifies for himself his fraudulent activities as he misappropriates with an intention of repaying back the amounts in due course, which may of course never ever happen, and in fact he keeps on stealing more and more because he is not caught. And it is reported that at least 30% of the frauds are attributed to the employees. Now, Main reasons for the occurrences of fraud relating to triangle. Now let us discuss the main reasons for the occurrences of frauds as described in the fraud triangle. Inadequate or poor internal control system. So you know what is an internal control. Internal controls are those controls that are set up in a small or big or large organization for observing the day-to-day operations from both finance, accounts and everywhere with proper reporting and proper control over what is happening on a day-to-day basis. So one of the main causes for the occurrence of frauds as for fraud triangle are either poor or total lack of internal controls. Management may be busy with other personal activities or involved in other businesses' interests and hence no monitoring on day-to-day basis or simply placing pure trust on one or few trusted employees. Most dangerous. Never place trust with a few or close trusted employees. Those are the people who stab you back at a later date. Internal control measures. Internal control measures are the most important set of policies for organization with clear specification of duties, responsibilities, segregation of job responsibilities, different levels of reporting and accountability. See, many organizations are having these measures and policies in bound books, but they are not implemented, the employees are not trained, and that is a basic lacuna. Setting up policies, procedures, SOPs is in bound books, and talking about it doesn't prevent, doesn't stop the frauds and other such acts. If there is no implementation or after implementation no control and there is no reporting of the internal control measures. And internal audit also one of the parts of the internal controls, and many organizations, whether statutorily required or not, employ internal auditors who are external auditors who on a day-to-day report on various activities. It will be effective if the management gives weight to the internal audit report and cooperates with the internal auditor. So, what are the preventive measures from the fraud triangle that we have studied? Educating the employees on the pros and cons of frauds, the consequences of committing frauds, encouraging whistleblower policy. I will discuss whistleblower in another episode. Of reporting any suspicious activity in the organization to higher management or statutory auditors, and if needed even to the police. And installing division of duties, which is most important, not trusting a single employee. Strict internal control measures and clear-cut organization structure with control points. Screening of employees thoroughly, that is the most important thing. See, without a background check, many people take and then later on regret the fraudulent activities of such players, because even some of them maybe organizations do psychometric tests also to know the behavioral aspects and nature of an employee. Most important for the HR department to first concentrate on the while absorbing new employees. Now, the fraud triangle can be best explained with a small illustration. Okay, see, this case relates to a medium-sized trading company, let us call it ABC Company Limited, with over 100 employees in different divisions. There is one senior audit accounts payable manager, let's say Kiran, working with the company since the inception of the company for over 10 years. Okay. Now, Kiran, being a senior manager and a long-standing employee with the company, has access to opening new entire accounts, bypassing general manager's approval. Also, Kiran can easily access the signature stamp of the general manager as it is not kept in safe custody. So, he has a compulsive pathological, and he has also, unfortunately, a compulsive pathological gambling problem. Kiran has also a compulsive pathological gambling problem. So this problem created an unshakable financial burden on him. As he has control over opening new vendor accounts, he opened XYZ Company Limited and started payments to the vendor. That is actually not going to any vendor. It is a fictitious account and the funds are going into wife's account against remittances and fictitious invoices raised by XYZ company with all relevant documentation in order, though no goods involved took place. The general manager's signature was forged and his authorized stamp was misused. So this was going on for 3 or 4 years when the statutory auditors found huge outstanding amounts against XYZ Company Limited. When brought to the notice of the management, it was found that the vendor never even existed, nor any goods are received by the company. The funds received against such fictitious invoices are always diverted into wife's account. Thus, from this example, the fraud was being perpetrated for 4 years with the company having an operational budget of several million rupees. So thus several million rupees was misappropriated by Kiran till the fraud was discovered. Another unfortunate or fortunate thing about these fraudsters is once they start committing frauds, they do not stop these frauds till they are caught. That's why ultimately they are caught. It may take 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or even 10 years. So, thus the above illustration of Kiran illustrates how a fraud triangle works and the reasons behind such fraudulent activity. In this case, number 1, he has full control of many things, and number 2, he has a compulsive pathological gambling problem. He is an addict. That is the reason. So, like that, to now briefly explain more about the fraudulent means by Kiran are lack of internal controls. So that gives scope for creating fictitious vendors. Then lack of segregation of duties. As being a very old-timer employee, Kiran was given multiple tasks and controls, which he misused. And easy access of higher authority signature and stamp, as in this case of general manager's stamp, which ought to have kept under lock and key. Then the extent of blame on external auditors depends on the materiality aspect of the fraud committed at the time of discovery of fraud, whereas the fraud was being perpetrated past 3 years prior to discovery, and it is a primary management's responsibility to put internal control systems in the organization. However, even the auditors also cannot, unless otherwise proved, and they can prove their professional due diligence, they will also be held responsible for not discharging their duties professionally. The COSO, Committee of Sponsored Organizations of the Treasury Commission, has laid out 5 areas of integrated internal controls of framework, named for the auditors. The auditors should test all the COSO components and their effectiveness. All this we are discussing because to detect the frauds committed, as discussed above, with as per the fraud triangle, 3 aspects. So the COSO has formulated some conditions which the auditor should test, like control environment, main component to establish controls down the line. So that is a very important thing. And then there are further, there is a risk assessment. Next, control activities. Next, monitoring the activities. Next, information and communications. So, the thing is in the fraud triangle, first, pressure of finance requirement due to some bad habits of the employee. Next, opportunity of misappropriation because it's in full control of and poor internal control of the operations and poor internal controls. Thirdly, rationalization. This may or may not exist, and by the way, the rationalization or attitude is depends upon the employee's intention of replacing the misappropriated cash. If you had the intention, then it is rational that he can put back the misappropriation of cash. Or sometimes the employee feels that the management are taking the bonuses and high salaries and going abroad on a thing, whereas hard worked employees are not adequately rewarded. Then they justify their fraudulent activities. That is called rationalization. So, the thing is, as quoted by a famous philosopher, rather fail with honor than succeed by fraud. It is vital to ensure the implementation of the preventive measures all discussed above or to mitigate the corporate fraud. It is rightly said, rather, and which should be put in the minds of all the employees, you rather fail with honor than succeed by fraud because of the consequences of the fraud once it is caught. So, the fraud triangle has taken a very primary role in all discussions of fraud aspects, because whether it is a single employee or a group of employees or management or anybody, these things affect the perpetration of fraud, even by an honest employee. And when he finds that the fraud is not discovered, he keeps on repeating that thing. So, I hope the listeners have got a broad idea about the importance of fraud triangle and what fraud triangle consists of. Fraud triangle consists of the main three aspects: opportunity, okay, and there is opportunity, rationalization, and okay, this and pressures. So people commit frauds, taking the opportunity and because they are under pressures, and they rationalize and justifies their fraud. So these things are always exist even at management level, because management has the opportunity, being in top management, okay, they have also pressures because to show profits, etc., to the stakeholders, or to cover up any big diversion of funds and all that. So under those pressures, they will also do all sorts of frauds, like cooking of books and all. And rationalization and attitude, of course, they cannot rationalize or of their acts, but they purely act on the opportunity. They divert the funds, and even to personal use or to other businesses, the advances and all taken from banks because of their position. And they'll also the pressures, once the funds are misappropriated or diverted, and cash flows of problems are there, and commitment to payment to banks and vendors goes out of hand, then that is the pressure. Then they try to cook the books and all, but ultimately they will be caught. And I will give broader corporate examples in my future podcast. If you have any doubts, please do reach out to me to my email. You can check it on my LinkedIn or YouTube, my videos, or I have my websites. Good day.